Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Rebirth from Mighty Boards. Rebirth is a 2 to 4 player tile-laying game designed by Reiner Knizia, and this is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. But like I said already, this is a 2 to 4 player tile-laying game. The general idea is players are going to have a little tile they have in their hands, and every turn, they're going to be placing the tiles out onto the board in an effort to score as many points as possible, with everything giving you points. We'll walk through how that works in a second, until eventually all players have placed all the tiles, and game end is triggered, score everything up, see who won. That's the basic idea. Place a tile down, score points. The question is, where and how are you going in order to score as many points as possible? To that end, bunch of things you can do to score points, all listed nicely, well, most of them listed nicely over here, but a bunch of other things you can go ahead and do. Right now over here, this is going to be a farm tile. I can go ahead and place this on any of the farm tiles that have that little symbol, or on any of the blank spaces on the board as well. To that end, I'm going to try to go ahead and place this somewhere where I can place it between a cathedral and a castle, because usually that's what I'm trying to do over here. In fact, right here is over good. I'm going to place this over here, right on this spot here. That's going to do a few things for me. The first is that it's placing it on a farm tile. I have a grouping of 1, so I'm going to go ahead and score 1 point over there. The second is that currently I now have the most tiles around this castle, so I'm going to temporarily put my castle over there on that spot, and if that stays there at the end of the game, that's going to be worth 5 points. But it's whoever has the most tiles around each spot, with tiebreakers prioritizing farm placement, which means as other players place tiles down, I may not keep control of that castle. And then secondly, I can go ahead and place a cathedral out because I'm next to a cathedral over here. That's going to give me a scoring objective over here. This will give me a way to earn 5 points if I accomplish what's on this card. In this case, have the most energy farm clusters of 3 or more. That's going to go ahead and give me 5 points in the game if I get that. Now there's 8 cathedrals in the game, which means there's 8 opportunities to draw more scoring cards. Each player can go on a cathedral, while castles are competitive, favoring whoever has the most around a castle. Cathedrals is simply if you place it next to it, you can go ahead and stack other players' cathedrals on top of that, also having them draw scoring cards as well. That's going to be a bunch of the ways we score points, but not all, but we'll go through a few turns, giving you a sense of how players are going to go ahead and do things. So let's go ahead and take Blue's turn over here. Blue also has one of these. Now Blue could try to cut me off. The problem is this is a 3-player game right now, and if he tries to spend all his time cutting me off, he's basically helping Orange win. So Blue's going to try to play in his best interest, at least for now. There'll be plenty of times you have an opportunity to both hurt people and help yourself. For right now, Blue's going to go ahead and do the same thing. Although this time, I'm not going to focus on drawing objective cards for them. They have an objective card, we'll put it off to the side. I'm not going to really look at it. I'm going to focus on playing gray for a second, or playing beige as we go through this. But again, they got ahead, they placed this here, they're going to score a point, and they get the castle placement, which may or may not be worth 5 points at the end of the game. We're going to have this player draw a card, again drawing the exact same one, which is just a coincidence. But let's go ahead and find another castle cathedral placement if we can. We could do one over here, and this actually nicely opens up to the border, so we'll go ahead and do that. We'll have them draw a card, we'll have them place their castle out, and they score a point. This is going fairly procedural right now because the game starts off fairly open like this. As people start placing more and more things, as you draw different tokens, that's going to really force you into choices. For example, even right now, Beige can choose between placing this here, which will go ahead and give them 2 points because it's 2 farms in a cluster. Your farms are going to get stronger and stronger as you place them out, or they can start trying to be mindful of where else they go in order to score points. To that end, for example, they could try to cut off Blue and also score positioning around this castle. Definitely not a bad move. Similar situation over here, the only problem is Orange can get around, so it's not a full cutting off. I think let's go ahead and start playing a bit competitive. We'll go over there, we'll get a single point over there, and we'll also go ahead and place another castle placement out. So we're kind of disincentivizing Blue from structuring around there. We're getting another castle position, but no what's it called, cathedral. Had we gone over here, we could have gotten the cathedral, but we'll try to work our way up there, hopefully disincentivizing others from going there. Blue will go ahead and go. They can go ahead. Now they're a little stuck. They could go here, but it's no longer the best position. So they kind of want to abandon that and maybe go over here, starting a new grouping where they could branch in either direction. We'll see how that goes. And they'll go ahead and place this out over here, move up a point, and they'll go ahead and get another cathedral card because they can place a cathedral down over there. So we're drawing these cards. These will give you bonus objectives. Now keep in mind, I am trying to build energy clusters, but I have to draw those tiles. Now you will be drawing most of your tiles. There's a few tiles set aside at the beginning of the game, but past that, most of your tiles are drawn. Now this one over here is going to be something we haven't talked about yet. That's going to be the settlements over here. Basically, you're going to have cities of size 1, 2, and 3. You can see 3, 2, and 1. You have different size cities, and when you place things down to the city, if you place it into a size 1 city, you simply get as many points on that token. That's indicated over here. A size 1 city, you get as many points as are on the token, so I would get 4 points. When you place it into a port city, you get an extra point, so you're going to be mindful of that. And then when you go ahead, that's going to be this symbol over here. And then on size 2s or 3s, you look at who has the most symbols. So for example, I can start locking in a size 3 right now, because that might set me up for success, and I would get the points. I might even get the second place points as well if I'm the only person to go there. Now 4 is good. I like using those to sweep in at the end, but no one's actually being competitive right now. So I have to try to lock this in. So I could go for a flat 4 points, or I could disincentivize people on a 2, which might be the best way to go. Let's see if I can find another castle and cathedral area where I can go ahead and score a bunch of things for that. We have a castle cathedral here, but no city. I do want a size 2 city. A size 2 port city is not bad either. It can lock me in around this castle over here. But let's see if we can go over here. We have a castle cathedral situation here. Let's go ahead and do this here. We're going to go over here. That's going to get me onto the city, and it's going to get me a castle and cathedral as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and the cathedral is going to go here. I'll draw a point scoring card, and now I'm also trying to go ahead and have the most ports, occupy more port spaces than any other player. So it's giving me another goal to go for, and now I wish I had gotten a port city, but then again I wouldn't have gotten that. We'll take another round or two to show you how this plays out, but you can see already decisions start to come up as you go through it. We're going to have blue go ahead and go. They have another one of these. They are going to go ahead and double down that. They're going to go up 2 points because they now have a size 2. We're going to have orange draw one and go, and you will have these in your hand at the start of your turn. You can decide as you go. We do have our first instance of energy. Now energy operates similar to regular farms, but the only difference is there's a separate terrain type over here, so you need to be mindful of that. They do not combine in points, so if I place this here, it's still only going to be 1 point. You always score for the size of that type of farm and of your tiles only. So over here, we're trying to choose where we think the best, this is a nice large energy patch. It might be worth going over here. It's a good spot to lock in around positioning around those, to lock in positioning around the castle, and then to also have a nice way to grow over here, although this particular patch, players can be incentivized to try to break it up because of how large it is. We're going to draw one of these over here. In fact, speak of the devil, do I try to cut off orange right now? I am being a bit of a jerk. I'm the one currently getting in the way of blue and orange, but then again, that's because I'm the only one playing all 3 colors right now. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So we're going to go here, and this is going to set us up nicely because we're going to try to branch out over here. We don't yet take control of this farm right now, of this castle. The way it works is if you have a city placement next to a castle and other players have farm placements, more farm placements or even tied number of farm placements beats city placements. So in general, you have to have more than the other player or the same much but more farms. That's the basic idea of the placement rules around castles. And that's kind of enough to give you a sense of how the game plays. You're going to repeat this process until all players run out of tokens. As you do so, the map is going to continue to close up, getting tighter and tighter, and you have to be more and more considerate. It starts off very open-ended, starts closing off rapidly as players place things down, as the board starts to take shape, as you're being mindful of your objectives and how the other players are placing. When you decide to prioritize your own strengths moving forward versus when you decide to get into the way of other players, and sometimes you can often do both. As you vie for fighting over castles. If I get a castle over you, that's a 10-point swing. If I think you're currently up on points, that's a good thing to pursue and prioritize, and players will all be playing that little game of trying to just get the best positioning possible as they go through the game. And that is basically how you play through Rebirth. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into my review, starting off with ease of play. So overall, game is very straightforward, very easy table. Again, I think I've taught you everything. I'm sure there's some details I've left out. There's going to be some cards over here that are simply worth 3 points if I can find them over here. Just a 3-point card, which I won't actually. Here we go. Cathedral bonus. Straight up 3 points over there. Outside of that, I don't think there's a lot to really cover. I mean, in a 2-player game, you're going to be blocking off sections of the map. There's going to be certain tiles. You're going to use a third color to block off certain areas. But really, you know most of the game by now. So ease of play is a fairly straightforward game. Around 10 minutes to teach, around 45 to 60 minutes to play, and overall table space is not that overwhelming. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like about the game, which is, like I mentioned already, it is very easy to teach table and play. It's a very accessible, straightforward, tile-laying game with enough strategy to keep you engaged and invested, while being light enough that it is more accessible. There are many ways to optimize in points with this game, and you're being very mindful of other players as you place. The game starts off, like I said already, starts off very open-ended, so at first it kind of feels very loosey-goosey. You can just do whatever you want, and you're like, do whatever you want with restriction, because you only have that one tile to choose from. But do whatever you want within that, and it just feels like, to a certain extent, it feels like you can go anywhere. And that's true, at least initially. As the board starts to fill up, players are going to have a harder and harder time choosing what makes the most sense for them. What's going to give you the most points? What's going to fulfill your objectives? What's going to get in the way of other players, or help yourself, or possibly both? There's going to be a lot more agency as far as determining what to pursue. Do you try to go ahead and build multiple small clusters to get much positioning around things? Do you try to have one giant area so you can start getting 7, 8, 9 points per placement on that giant energy farm as you go? There's lots of things. The castle infighting, trying to vie for castle control, or even just the city block control. When you have a city block, you're going to score 5 points for whoever has the most, 3 points a second, then 8 and 5, and if you get all of them, you get both of those, which does give you an incentive to try to go for everything, possibly placing a little 1 points elements to fill out gaps. Over here right now, players are really not incentivized to go here because I have a 4, which is the highest number you can have. Unless a player wants to go ahead and place, well, I mean, a 4 wouldn't help them because a tie prioritizes whoever was there first, so I'm just going to go ahead and place a 1 here the next time I can, and get a solid 8 points for those 2 placements, combined with the fact that I was next to a cathedral and a castle. You're going to have those things pulling you in different directions, those different strategic choices, but they only really start to develop as the board starts to fill up. At first, it's go anywhere, get some standard. Again, I would say fairly standard first turn moves are almost always going to be getting you a castle adjacency and a cathedral card, which will start your directional play, because those objectives really will help guide you in different directions. The combination of the other players, your own placements, and the objectives all combine nicely to give you a bit of a torn decision making as far as what to go, what to do, where to go, and how to optimize your score. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, the gameplay is definitely on the lighter side. It's not so much just something I don't like, but just in terms of these games, the types of things I prioritize a bit more are things that are a little more chunky in decision making. I think this one starts off very open-ended. It does branch out into more decision making, but I would still say it's on the lighter side as far as games go. Not too light, but definitely on the lighter side. I'd say as well it plays better at 3 and 4 players, with a caveat that we'll get to later. I think 2 players, the having set areas blocked off, still makes the game a little less dynamic than a 3 or 4 player experience. I think 3 to 4 players is where the game is going to shine. Arguably 3 players, but honestly even 4 players is fast enough. So 3 to 4 players I would think is where this game is going to shine. And I'll also say that I wish the objectives had more point variety. Right now the objectives are all divided up into 5 points or 3 points if you just get the objective. If you just get 3 points, or 5 points if you do something. I wish there was more scaling around different types of objectives, different point values that they have. It would give you more reasons to push for one thing versus another, as opposed to this kind of all things created equal situation. And as well as that, I don't think all objectives are created equal in their difficulty level, which means the fact that right now you kind of have objectives that I think are variable in how difficult they are, and yet always score 5 points. So I wish that was changed a bit. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, I mentioned this already, but the first part of the game can feel a bit aimless. You only start to get a direction in the game as you have 2 or 3 objectives, as the board starts to fill out. Which means the first, I would say, third of the game is open-ended enough that you can kind of do a lot of different things, and the structure doesn't, the tornness of your decision doesn't feel as present. As you enter the second 2/3, you start to get more of that, but don't judge this game by your first third into it. I don't think it really shines until you start to have those things pulling you in different directions. I'll say that late game objectives can be hard or sometimes impossible. As you start to get objectives late game, you're going to have some that just, either already taken by somebody else, or you just fight really hard to get. Which means if you're drawing a late game objective that gives you 5 points because it's easy to get, and I draw a late game objective and I have to struggle hard to get it or possibly can't, that's just an extra 5 points to you. For me, I don't mind that as much because to me that a lot of the strategy is get your objectives in early. Try to get spread out. It adds that decision making of really forcing yourself in different directions. But I also can't deny that if we both play late game objectives, if we both get things late, you might get lucky where I might not. So that could be something that bothers you. And then lastly, I'll say that I mentioned the 3 to 4 players are better with a caveat. The caveat part is the fact that in this game, sometimes you have to decide to block another player. If you have a player who's going for this whole energy farm and they're able to get their things and no one's blocking them off, if it's not advantageous for me to go there and get in your way, effectively you'll have times where because somebody is accumulating a grouping of farms that's going to escalate in points, one player might have to go ahead and bite the bullet and cut them off at the knees to try to stop them from getting those points. And in a 2-player game, anything I do is a direct transition to our point scoring, so it makes sense to make those decisions. Whereas in a 3 or 4-player game, you might have a situation where all the players recognize they have to block player A, but one of those players has to kind of give up an optimal placement to do so, and that could just be a not feel-good moment for that player. As far as final thoughts on Rebirth, I overall enjoy this game. Rebirth is satisfying, it's easy to play, it's easy to teach. Reiner Knizia in general has a ton of tile-laying games, and a lot of them are very satisfying in terms of the decision-making that they manage to engender, while giving you a very simple, straightforward set of rules, but enough complexity built into the game, enough complexity built into the things that develop, that you still have interesting decisions and play to go with. And this checks all those boxes. And the game looks beautiful. I didn't even talk about the game in general. The art, production, all that looks beautiful. And again, this is very much a prototype. I believe other things are still going to be changed. I don't know if there are additional maps. We have Map Scotland over here. I don't know what their plans, if any, are for other maps. But yeah, overall this game is accessible, easy to teach, easy to play, satisfying, and enjoyable enough. But also enjoyable enough is kind of where this game is for me. Reiner Knizia has a lot of tile-laying games and various levels of complexity, and for me, his lighter ones I often enjoy, but I don't find myself as pulled towards as far as needing to play this. For me, this is a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoy it. I would happily play it anytime. It's quick playing, it's accessible, and it is enjoyable. But it's also not necessarily the one I'm going to be drawn towards as much as some of his deeper titles with within the genre. So overall, very satisfying, a 3.5 out of 5, a good recommendation if you're looking for something a little bit more lightweight or accessible, while not necessarily shining as much as something like Tigris and Euphrates might. Speaking of Tigris and Euphrates, as far as other game recommendations, if you're looking for another recent Reiner Knizia title that I kind of felt very similar about as far as both enjoying the decision making and the things that you have to decide and go through as you place different things in different areas, I would say Cascadero from Bitewing Games very much fell into a similar weight class, similar decision making, very different game as far as the rules. Again, Reiner Knizia is very good at managing to have game systems that are similar and yet totally different at the same time. So I definitely recommend checking out Cascadero as far as something similar in the weight class of Rebirth. And then also Babylonia. If you're looking for something with a drop more meatiness to it while also being just as accessible, I think Babylonia is a nice next step as far as complexity within this tile laying genre without yet moving into the, Tigris and Euphrates class of his games. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.